I had 5.6 inches.
Oh, there you go. Didn't set up the open. Sorry about that, folks. Bitter cold continues for the next 3 days. Winter storm warnings from Texas to Georgia. And everybody from the Rockies to the East Coast to the Deep South is just embraced inside a refrigerator. And we'll let you know how long we're going to be in that fridge before things improve. But first things first, the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which you can support by using the referral link to Amazon pinned to the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast. It's really easy. Just click on the link, search for whatever it is you're buying, buy it, and Amazon sends us a little bit of coin for sending you there. It's a very easy and simple way, and it doesn't cost you one extra dime. And we appreciate those of you who have supported the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast by shopping on Amazon. So I was looking at some of the final totals and then sort of comparing it with my forecast. My forecast was actually pretty good. I have to say, a little bit high in some spots and a little bit low in others. You're never going to hit it 100%, but it did what it did. And I was not part of the 10 to 12 inch crowd, which was never really on the table anyway. But now let's go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, like it took a lot of grief from people, especially Saturday night after one particular forecast came out and said that parts of our area was going to get 12 or more inches. And then, Joe, why aren't you calling for the same thing? Or what, And I said, oofa, watch watch whoever you want to watch and believe whoever you want to believe. I went 4 to 6 north of 287, and that's the thing that got everybody all PO'd. I said 4 to 6. He was like, well, why aren't you going 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 of the north of 287? I'm wondering, Joe, whether or not many of the forecasters, especially in the New York area, know what 287 is or where they just arbitrarily using.
Well, and then there's two parts to 287. There's 287 in Westchester, and then there's 287 in New Jersey.
Right.
And in New Jersey, 287 runs north-south. In New York State, it runs west-east.
Right.
So
that's correct.
Yeah, so you gotta, I always try to delineate when I'm talking about Route 287. I delineate if it's New Jersey's 287 or if it's Westchester's 287. Look, these are the evils. Joe, I have been preaching this for how long? Okay. I have been at the pulpit. I have been preaching and it's in the Bible. Okay. It is in the Bible about forecast shopping. All right. This is what people do. And, they don't quite understand that we don't all, get together and have a phone conversation and try to sync numbers with, all the other weather people on the networks. Everybody's got their own opinions about what they think is going to happen. And I just you need to put a stop to forecast shopping. You're not responsible. I don't get it that much anymore because I've said it enough times on my own Facebook page. I don't watch anybody. And frankly, I don't care what anybody else is doing. I don't care. Okay. My numbers are my numbers. And that's it. If you're going to start asking me about why are you doing this because so-and-so said that, my response to that is I don't give a what somebody else is doing. And stop forecast shopping. If you're going to forecast shop, go someplace else and do it. My store is closed.
Well, I've told the story before about John Carpilio, the news director at WHJJ in Providence, Rhode Island. When I did that station, I did it for about a dozen years. Radio station 920 on the dial in Providence. And, John would record me at like 4:30 in the morning to do the morning drive weather. And when I gave my forecast in advance of a big snowstorm, let's say I said 2 to 4 inches or 3 to 5 inches of snow, as soon as I finished the recording, John would come back and say, well, Copeland says, and Copeland was Bob Copeland, the TV weather guy who did the late night weather in Boston. And he said, well, Bob Copeland says it's going to be 6 to 8 inches. And I like John a lot, but when he did stuff like that, I finally one day I said, John, I don't give a blankety blank blank what Bob Copeland is saying. This is what I'm saying. You could take it to Bob Copeland. I really don't care what other people, and that's what people were coming after me. And in fact, those of you who read my Facebook page, there was one person in particular who said, "Get a life, Joe. Learn something. All the other people are saying this, and you're only saying that." And the funniest thing, Joe, is that he brought up News 12. He said, even at News 12, they're saying blah, 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 blah. He said, watch them, watch it. And I'm saying to myself, does this guy know who I am? Does this guy know I was the chief meteorologist at News 12 for 21 years?
But the thing is, it's not relevant to you what other people are doing. And that
Right,
needs to be made clear to people who do that.
right,
You don't care.
right.
These are my numbers. If you don't like it, go someplace else. Okay. Usually they'll back off when you do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't meaning, I wasn't trying to, then they suddenly, yeah, okay. You have to just put,
The thing that
you
got
just
me
have to put a
the thing that
stop.
really had me laughing, though, was when he said, well, News 12 said this. And I'm saying to myself, the people who are now on News 12, the meteorologists or forecasters, I don't know what they are, but the people who are doing the weather on News 12 now, if you combine all of them, you roll them up in one big ball, all of their experience, they wouldn't even come close to the number of years of my experience in doing this both on radio and television. And this guy, this dummy, saying I ought to watch News 12 to get the forecasting. He said, "Get it right, Rayo. Get it right." And
Yeah, I see immediately I would, my response right off the bat is my page is not for you. Okay. You need to go find, actually, what I think you should do, if you want my opinion, okay. That children's book that you wrote,
yes,
children's weather book?
yes,
What I think you should do is just say, my, 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 uh, my my page is not for you. You need to go someplace where someone can, where someone can uh, speak weather to you at your level. Here's a book I highly recommend, and then post the link to it. I think that will, no, that's serious. I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. You're wasting your time and energy to get into arguments with these people. You need to
exactly.
just come straight forward and hit them square in the nose, with a comeback that will either silence them and they leave. And remember, Joe, if they post back and say, "Well, I'm leaving your page," then your response to should be, "I'm sorry, dear, but this is not an airport. You need not announce your dramatic departure." Okay.
Or I'll help you pack.
Right, exactly. Exactly. All right. Welcome to everybody tonight to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And those of you who are lurking in the background, we welcome you too. And subscribe, though we love to have you on the chat board. They're very gentle on the chat board most of the time. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us, because we're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35. And when there's a storm going on, we throw in the occasional show like we did the last couple of Fridays. And if you like the show, of course, you know how to do this. You just hit the like button. Joe's got his bell all set to tinkle, don't you, Joe?
I love tinkling.
Yes, you do. All right, so we have a storm system in the Gulf of Mexico, and of course, the entire southern part of the United States, but
Can I just?
particularly,
I don't want to be political here.
but you're going to, so go ahead.
Are we going to be getting into trouble starting now or in the next few days if we continue to refer to that body of water as the Gulf of
Oh,
Mexico?
stop, and stop.
I
Okay,
don't know. I'm confused here.
stop.
There's you know there's
Alt, alt.
okay.
Okay, so we have a storm in what is at the moment still called the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, and it's got the whole South in an absolute tizzy. Joe, they they've closed. I mean, it's hard for me because coming down and having lived in the colder northern climates for virtually all of my life, with a few exceptions here and there. But they're forecasting, I think, maybe a half an inch of snow possible accumulation in and around Atlanta. I don't know that they're even going to get that much. Yeah, I'm going to probably have to go south of Macon, which is, a fair 100-mile plus distance south of Atlanta when you start to get maybe into some accumulating stuff on the order of an inch or two. All the schools are closed tomorrow. They closed all the schools. No, I get that they don't see snow very often and it can be very debilitating, but they did a really good job in the last storm here in Atlanta. They really did. They got ahead of the game in terms of the road conditions and everything else. But it's just, I don't know. I just find it amazing that they closed the schools on the drop of a hat. So I don't know. It's a little hard for me to grasp. Thankfully, I'm not a parent with small children. I'm a parent with grown children.
No, we've been there and we've done that.
Yes,
I
exactly.
always enjoyed when we did have our young children. I always enjoyed the 5 a.m. In advance of a major storm or some major weather event, having the phone ring at 5 o'clock in the morning and be informed that there's going to be a 2 hour delay or school is closed or whatever, and then of course then you can't get back to sleep. But
Right.
those days are gone, my friends. We thought they'd never end.
Yeah. Steve Lapointe. No, I totally get that. I totally get that. It doesn't happen very often. And I totally understand it is debilitating and ice can be a big issue, although I don't think in this particular instance ice is a problem anywhere close to here. If you're down along the immediate Gulf Coast, yes. I'm just saying that for me it's just a little bit hard to fathom because I've driven in 20-inch snowstorms in a four-wheel drive truck and I've never gotten stuck anywhere. So, and I've driven while it's been snowing at 5 inches an hour. I have done that. So I don't know. That's just me. Again, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here. It's not a criticism per se. It's just hard for me to come to grips with it. Let's put it that way. All right, well, shall we check out what's going on in the southern states, Mr. Rayo?
Might as well. There's nothing going on up here anymore except
That's
for
correct.
weather.
By the way, my low this morning was 9, my high today 25, and the current temperature is 16. So I'm heading back down to the dingle digits by the time we get to tomorrow morning. Okay, winter storm warnings from Browns from I mean, it's just I find this fun, it's just you don't get to say this many times, Joe. We have winter storm warnings from Brownsville, Texas, okay, all the way up, all through eastern Texas, including Corpus Christi, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Galveston, Beaumont, Port Arthur. In the southern half of Louisiana, including Lake Charles, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, southern Mississippi, Gulfport, Biloxi, southern Alabama, Mobile, the Florida Panhandle, almost, but not quite to Jacksonville. I don't think Jacksonville is in the winter storm warning. They're right on the edge. Also for the southern half of Georgia, Atlanta is in the winter weather advisory area, and I'm north of that advisory zone, so I don't even have advisories up over here. And we have winter storm warnings up as far northeast into South Carolina. We have also up for coastal Georgia, so that include which means Savannah is in it, and the winter storm warnings up to Charleston, and they have watches up to the eastern parts of North Carolina. So I mean, this is indeed a rare event, and actually, from the standpoint of snow, let me bring the snowfall forecast. I'm going to use the 72-hour expected sum. And obviously this had yesterday's stuff on it, so now it's refreshed. Hang on a second, folks. So this is what is expected And they Weather Service digital forecasts have the potential for a coating to an inch all the way down the coast, but the warnings are up more because of ice for sleet and freezing rain, and maybe more freezing rain than anything else. But when you get into the snow in and around the Houston area, I mean, they're going 4 to 6 inches in and around the Houston area, 3 to 4 inches for New Orleans, with more on the North Shore. Baton Rouge has got a 5 print on it. Lake Charles, a 7 print. I mean, these are snow amounts. If these snow amounts verify, they haven't had that much snow in decades in some instances here. The snow amounts lessen as you go east, with several inches in southern Alabama and in the western part of the Florida Panhandle, and then it goes back down to about an inch or two in Georgia. There's probably going to be more in the way of freezing rain issues for areas of, say, Tallahassee to Jacksonville, and they're going for this is ending Wednesday evening. Oh, actually, ending 72 hours, ending Thursday evening. So they're going for a coating to an inch or so, except for the eastern coast of North Carolina, including Cape Hatteras, where they've got higher numbers of 3 to 4 inches forecast there. This is a very unusual event. It is not an unheard of event because every 10 or 20 years you get something like this. This is not something new. This is not something that's never happened before. It just hasn't happened in a long time.
That's right. Long, long time. And that's the problem sometimes in a lot of weather events is the fact that there's such a long period of time in between occurrences that sometimes people just feel like it has never happened before. It has happened. We talked about this last night when we were talking about great southern storms of the distant past that was recorded by weather historian David Ludlam. But continue, Mr. Chaffee.
Well, I mean, when you've got an Arctic air mass like this one, where all this light blue and dark blue you see, these are, you know, I guess, and this is another, I guess, a pet peeve of mine, because we have cold weather advisories, Joe, and the blue that that actually I like that color. That color looks good on me. That blue, the darker blue, that's extreme cold weather warnings. Now, they've gotten to the point now where they're just putting advisories up for everything. And I did see, I don't know if didn't, I'm back a number of weeks ago, but not that many weeks ago. I forgot where it was. They had a heavy drizzle advisory that was issued by one of the Weather Service offices. I mean, have we really gotten to that point that we have to warn for every single every single weather possibility in order to calm people down or excite them? I don't know which way you want to look at it.
I don't know. I did to me when you had extremely cold weather. Usually, the first thing that popped up was wind chill advisory. My assumption is that they could just as easily have said wind chill advisory. These new advisories that they seem to be making up out of thin air. It just kind of like blows my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is, and it's just I don't know. To me, I don't get putting up a cold weather advisory for Pennsylvania or New York State. I know it's cold. It's going to down in the single digits to near zero. But this is not. I mean, it's not record-breaking cold. It's just not. We've had much colder Arctic air masses than this.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've seen tremendously cold outbreaks, which have lasted. I mean, like you and I remember the winter of 1979. That was the whole month of February almost was bitterly cold, frigidly
That was
cold.
that was three that was 3 weeks in a row where just about every day the low temperature was down in the single digits.
Yep,
every day. It was, and that's in the metro areas. In areas inland, it was single digits and single digits below zero, and even double digits below zero. And in fact, on the day before the President's Day storm was when New York State set the record. I think it was Old Forge or Saranac Lake got to 54 degrees below zero.
Yep, remember it well. On
So,
duty.
you
I
know,
was on duty that morning.
I mean, what are they going to do when they get to that point? What kind of an extreme cold advisory warning up in effect? I don't know. Lake effect snow warnings up again, Joe. You want to guess where?
Uh, where? Watertown.
North central New York and
Upstate.
southwestern New York. This
Yes.
has been the bell that has been rung since the end of November. This is their year for these lake effect snow events, the way the weather patterns have set up. And by the way, if you notice where the cold weather advisories cut off, basically it's everybody east of the Rockies. If you go out west, uh, it's been a delightful winter from the standpoint if you're one of these people that loves sunshine every single day. This has been much different from the last several winters out in the western part of the United States, where they've been dealing with either record rainfalls or record snowfalls. This year, they're making up for those very wet years with what so far has been an extremely dry winter. Even in the Pacific Northwest, they're not getting the regularity of storms that usually come in there in the wintertime.
Yeah. I don't have much more to add to what you just said.
Well, I'm glad that you admit that you've been left speechless. Okay, here uh, the subtropical jet's pretty obvious on the satellite loop with these clouds streaming northeastward across Florida and out into the open waters of the Atlantic. So moisture is basically cut off for the Great Lakes, except for the lake effect stuff, for the Great Lakes and for the east and back up into the plains. The moisture is building though across Texas, and then you've got more Pacific moisture coming in to Baja California. You can see the clouds there just offshore, Miss Fowl, right? So you might have some cloud cover to deal with. And there's a system off the coast of the Pacific Northwest that is approaching at this time, although the radars are absolutely silent. We are beginning to see some snow breaking out here in North Texas. I don't know how much of this is actually reaching the ground, but we're starting to see the radars gelling a bit. Also around the Houston area, beginning to see the radars pick up. And later on tonight and during tomorrow, this is going to be the snow system. But with all that's going on in the South, Joe, none of this is going to be coming up the eastern seaboard, although it actually will be not that far away. It'll probably come up to just being offshore, but we don't see precipitation issues or snow issues for the coastal part of the Northeast for the rest of this week.
And Joe, just getting back a few moments ago to we were talking about 1979 in at Central Park. We talk about how cold that particular month was. I'm looking at the records here. That was only, we're looking at the top 10 coldest Februaries. That was only the eighth coldest February on record, 1979, with an average temperature of 25.5 degrees. And we've actually had, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember this, but in 2015, that's what, 10 years ago,
Right.
we had the third coldest
Yes,
February
that
on
I
record,
remember. No, that I remember. That,
23.9 degrees.
yeah, was it the third coldest or the second coldest?
The third coldest. You figure that the top five would go back to the late 1800s or early 1900s. You wouldn't possibly have such a frigid temperature spread or such a frigid temperature for a month. This close into modern era, the modern day. 2015, 23.9 degrees, third coldest February on record. The coldest, by the way, 1934. That was the year we saw 15 below zero at Central Park. The coldest, and that year, 1934, the average temperature didn't even break 20,
Yeah, it was a little,
19.9 degrees.
yeah, and maybe, what was number two was probably like what 21 degrees for the average for the month.
22.7, and
Yeah,
that
so
was
there's like a 3 degree gap there. That's a. Can you imagine that as cold as say the number two and number three winter were? And I remember the number three, 2015, very well. Um, that it would have to be like almost 4 degrees colder than for the month. I mean, that's a big number.
well.
Uh,
You look at the list, and of the 10, each successive temperature record is separated from the next by, oh, I don't know, about zero point 0.2, zero point 0.3 degrees.
yeah,
And you're right. Number two and number one are separated by 2.8 degrees.
that's
That's
a lot.
ridiculous.
That is a lot spread over a
Yeah,
month. That's a lot, and yeah, that New York City record low of what was it, minus 15, minus 13? I forget.
minus 15.
Minus 15. That's probably, I always said I had like all these records that I wanted to see broken in my lifetime. And that's the only one that's left is the minus 15.
I don't know if we'll ever see that broken. I think what we would need? We would need like a deep snow cover, a big snowstorm that drops, let's say, a foot or more of snow on New York City, and then almost immediately, both the upper level 500 millibar winds and the surface winds come straight down from the north and bring us our coldest spot. And then maybe, just maybe, we just might be able to challenge that 15 below record.
Yeah, it would have to be that the weather pattern we had set up back this December. It would have to be something like that, where you have a storm that's somewhere between Maine and Newfoundland, and you've got that northeast isobar that runs from Labrador, right down the coast over a deep snow cover. If we had that, if we were to have that set up now, we probably would be down in below zero in a setup like that if we had it now. But it came
Oh,
in
yeah.
December, so it was still kind of early. But if we had it now, we definitely would have seen that.
And
Um,
I should also put, people say, so, well, the reason why it's never gets as cold like that anymore is that the buildup of urban climate, urbanized, it's so much different now than it was back in the 30s with all the skyscrapers and the glass thing. But then I say, if that be the case, then why isn't that same theory working for Chicago? Chicago, has more than, and especially this winter and in other winters, have had a number of days where the temperature barely was able to crack 5 or 6 degrees during the day, and they've been below zero far more times than New York. Now, I know Chicago isn't as populated, as densely populated as New York, but still, it's a big, big city.
it's an
And
urban
still, for
area, yeah,
whatever reason, they
and
get
they got like Michigan there too. Actually, if you go back in the that weather archive that goes all the way back, if you look at the upper air for the setup in the night that 1934. Okay. So you remember a couple of weeks ago how some models on some of the runs were taking the whole vortex and bringing it down, and they had like a,
right.
a 492 upper low down in Virginia. Well, in
Yeah.
that particular year, it was a 474 vortex that came all the way down and passed right over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York City.
Ugh.
Literally the whole polar vortex at 500 millibars came all the way down, and it was a 1074 pressure high that came down with it.
Oh,
Okay, and and this will make everybody feel a little bit better when they complain about the fact that there's all this cold air that it warms up and rains. Okay, I don't know if it was 3 days or 4 days after they hit that 15 below, because the high went off the coast, like off the Georgia coast, and moved out. It warmed up and rained, and they
yeah.
never saw a flake or an ice pellet. Okay, so
Right.
it does happen. It just does happen. The high went out off the southeast coast. The wind turned south southwest. There was a cold front that approached. There was some Gulf moisture. They never saw a flake or an ice pellet. So
Isn't that amazing?
So when you see it happen here, think about the fact that it was 15 degrees below zero, and at 3 days or 4 days later, it warms up and rains. The I mean, I think it's criminal that it would do that, but that's just sometimes how the atmosphere works. It's just like the other way when you get into late February and particularly in March when you get these days where temperatures reach up above 70 and then it snows the next day. And we saw that back, what was it, 2017 or 2018? One of those years
Right.
where it was they set all-time record highs in February. It got to 80 degrees at Newark, and the next day it was 19, and we had blizzard warnings up. So anyway, uh, no danger of any of that extreme weather happening anytime soon. WPC on their rainfall forecast, or I'm sorry, I should say liquid precipitation forecast, very dry the next 7 days from Maine down to South Carolina, except for the immediate coast with because of this Gulf storm that's coming out. And you can see also the buildup of moisture from northeast Texas up into Tennessee and back down into Alabama. Now, some of that is from the system here, and then some of that is going to be from another system that's probably going to move through over the weekend. The except for the lake effect areas around the Great Lakes, the rest of the country, we're really not showing much of any precip, although we are seeing maybe the chance for some rain over the next 7 days in Southern California, maybe a quarter to a half an inch in some places. Whoopee. And in the Rockies, mostly a quarter of an inch. A couple of places get close to a half. So they get some snow, but nothing crazy. Now, here's our Gulf system, and it's a it's getting pinched underneath the big Arctic high to the north. So you see the snow area that breaks out tonight into tomorrow afternoon. It shoots up into Georgia, and then I get right to the northern edge of that light blue. If that gets to me, I'll probably see 5 flakes. And then you see the pink area down in southern Georgia and on the Florida Panhandle. You start to get into freezing rain with this, and then it really blossoms out during Tuesday night from the Panhandle northeastward to up the South Carolina coastline with snow inland, and then of course low slides the low itself goes way out to the east. It's just like this giant overrunning pattern, and it the snow area makes it to
The fifteen
southeast
hundred mile
Virginia
long, the 1,500 mile warm front.
pretty much, and exactly, pretty much against all that Arctic air. And then, of course, the high is still to the just nearby and overhead for Wednesday night and Thursday. It's still going to be very cold here until Friday. I think Friday's the day we really start to see temperatures bounce up toward or maybe even a little above freezing. But looking down the road, the one thing I noticed, Joe, that going forward in the next 2 weeks, there's a lot of short waves running around. And it just seems to me like the models don't seem to know what to do with them and how they're going to react. So, I don't know. I don't know if I have a whole lot of confidence going forward after what happens this week, because with all these weather systems running around, we're going to see the models do one thing on one run and then do something else on the next. It's going to be hard to gain a sense of continuity going forward, I think, as we go through the end of January and the beginning of February.
Climate Prediction Center is saying that we're going to get a nice bounce back temperature wise in February, that the probabilities are for milder than normal temperatures. They on last Friday they had the experimental 3 to 4 week prog, and they had for the first half of February, Joe, 1st to the 14th, Valentine's Day, above normal temperatures, and for the entire month of February, which they did. Actually, there was an update on Wednesday of last week for the month of February, and again, all the places that are frozen now or will be frozen for the next few days, that swath is going to apparently be above normal temperature wise, according to Climate Prediction Center in February. So we
Oh,
had it was a relatively warm December. We're seeing a shot of very cold air this week, but apparently after that, we warm up again for February.
well, we'll see. I mean, I believe that the The monthly forecast for January was above normal temperatures for the eastern two-thirds of the United States.
I think so.
Yeah, so
But then again,
that
but
didn't
that takes,
exactly play out very well, did it?
but that takes into account, let's say, the entire month of January.
Right.
If you have a frigid, shot for 2 or 3 days,
Yeah, but this
yeah,
has been a cold month overall, Joe. I mean, this is not just 2 or 3 days. We've had cold air, cold high
yeah,
after cold high after cold high coming down.
right, right. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of stands to reason. We're really not getting what normally is described as the January thaw. That doesn't seem to be. That's not going to happen. So maybe it gets postponed into February. I don't know. I was looking at a few other things as far as teleconnections are concerned, and there's I was looking at the Madden-Julian oscillation, which tries to go into one of the warm phases and then kind of gets deflected into the neutral zone. And I mean, I don't follow that. I don't really follow that very closely. I certainly don't pay too much attention to it as far as my day-to-day forecast. I just, I look at it every once in a while from just a standpoint of a little bit of curiosity. So
Traditionally the January thaw, traditionally now, has been from just looked it up here, the 22nd through the 29th. At least that's how it shows up on the uh, the averages for White Plains, Westchester Airport. That
yeah.
it goes, the average temperature goes from 34 up to 38, and then starts declining again after the
Oh,
28th or 29th of January. So
well, that's
there's a
pretty.
little bit of a bump.
Yeah, that's interesting that there's actually a statistical bump. It kind of makes sense. The atmosphere spends all its cold air and it has to reload. And there's only so much of it to go around. I think you have Briller Jeopardy, and we've right.
I have it.
All right, I just want to mention, I said it last night, but in case you weren't here last night, Scott Briller, who's a regular on the chat board, but um, uh, hasn't really been active these last couple of years, really, because he was taking care of his mom, and his mom was a great fan of the show. She sadly passed away a few days ago, and we extend our sympathies and our condolences to Scott. So he's taking a little bit of a break, but we do have the Briller Jeopardy that he sent us uh, the other day, so we'll go with that.
Okay, so on this edition of Briller Jeopardy, the average, now we've been doing average high temperatures, but now we shift to average low temperatures.
Low temperatures.
January. The low, yes.
Low.
We have, so we have these cities starting with Boston. The average low temperature for Boston, Joe, in January.
I will say, I'll say 2023.
Joe?
Ta-da!
Ta ta ta. So there you go. Chuck Cardillo at 22, Jason Fox 18, Ken Musillo 24, Frank Scalera 22. You're all circling the wagon. William Huber had 23 too, but 23 it is for Boston. How about the average low in Baltimore?
Baltimore. I will say, uh, hold on, 39, 24, 32, 7, 39. I'll say, I'll say 25.
Good guess. Unfortunately, not quite good enough. What did you say, 25?
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit too low.
Okay.
But I do see that Frank Scalera has 29. David Fuller, you're in Snake Country with 28, and same for with Vincent Croce. And Mike Waterhouse Banzai also at 28.
Well, Northern Grace has 27.
Well, Northern Grace gets it. I didn't see Northern Grace, but she has it. And there, this one is for you, Northern Grace.
By the way,
27.
Ken Musillo hit super chat earlier. Thank you, Kenny. Most appreciated as always. All right, next.
Chicago, Windy City of Chicago,
All right. What was Boston?
23.
Chicago. I will say, I'll say 22.
A tad on the mild side. And
Okay.
in fact, Christopedia, 19. That's very close. Snake Country, in fact. Craig
Maggie
Carl,
P has 20.
who had 20?
Maggie P.
Maggie P. Maggie P. Ding, ding, ding for you. You got it at 20. So, next one on the list is Buffalo. Buffalo.
Buffalo. Um, hmm. I'll say, uh, I'll say, oh God, what will I say?
I don't know.
Uh, I'm trying to decide, because Buffalo's right on the lakefront, so it's a little, there's a big difference between the downtown and the airport and all. Um, I'll say 20, just to say a round number. I'll say 20.
Joe, that's a great guess. Vincent Croce agrees with you at 20. Unfortunately, it's just a tad too mild.
Okay, so that tells us that Ken Musillo at 18 and Mary Rippion at 18. Uh,
Josie and Mike Waterhouse Bonsai got it right on the nose with
at
19.
19. I
And
was
I'm
gonna
reading
go.
this. Yeah,
I was gonna go 19, and then I just kind of chickened out.
the executive producer, by the way, informs me my counter says 98, but the executive producer, Mrs. Rayo, says we have hit 100. So this is for those of you who did get 19 for Buffalo and 100 likes tonight. Thank
Okay.
you, Frank Calera. I saw that. Yes, thank you. Last one. Well, actually, not the last one because we have a bonus too. Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. And there ain't another.
And there ain't
We
another good,
Cincinnati.
yeah, way till Cincinnati.
Hmm. What did we say Baltimore was?
27.
27. I'll say for Cincinnati, I'll say 26.
Well, John Melander said 26, but you know what? You know what?
What?
Krishnapedia got it right on the nose with 23 degrees.
Oh, 23. Okay.
23. Congratulations, Krishnapedia.
So
By the
what's the
way,
bonus?
now who knows the nickname for Cincinnati? What do they
Oh,
call it?
isn't that the Queen City?
The Queen City, yes. One of these days I'm going to get a chance. I want to see the Queen City for
Which
myself.
Queen?
I don't know. But anyway, here's the bonus. Let's see how well you do with this one. Lake Placid.
Oh, Jesus. Really? I mean, this is a place that's got minus 54 in their record count somewhere. Uh, the low.
Average low
Um,
in January at Lake Placid.
I'm just going to take a wild guess. I'll take a low number guess and say 12.
Joe, it's not a double digit number. Now,
Oh, it is.
John Melander got very, very close with 7. Rich Rockmansky, you're just a tad too low with 5. Steve LaPointe, you're way down there at 1. No.
James Davidson said 4.
Nope. Too cold.
Too cold. Tyler
Terry
Fielder
Crosby,
at
110.
6.
Chuck Cardillo and Latex Dreams at 6. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai with 6. 6 seems to be the popular number, but it's a tad too cold.
Well, Chuck Cardillo also said 7.
That's getting closer. Joseph Gaffney says 7.
All right.
Hi,
And
Joe.
Frank Scalera said 8.
8 is correct. Congratulations, Frank. You don't win absolutely anything, but you do win the bell ring. 8 degrees, the average low temperature at Lake Placid.
So it literally is called the Queen City It was literally named for a queen, but it doesn't say what queen. During the colonial years, and the county named after her birthplace, Cincy, Cinci, called itself the Queen City because it was the biggest and best city of the West, quote unquote. Well, that's that answer. Um, to the Queen of the West in her garlands dressed on the banks of the beautiful river. This was a reference to the vineyards in the Cincinnati area that grew in the surrounding hills, and the Queen of the West refers to the city of Cincinnati. Which queen? Oh, Queen Charlotte? Um, let's see. I'm just trying to hear.
Somebody said Cinderella, Northern Grace.
Uh, okay, so the Queen City. Just reading here from the Cincinnati Enquirer. Uh, Blah, blah, blah. The Queen City label came from more than 200 years ago when Cincinnati was the first named in a newspaper as Queen of the West. That was in 1819, the same year when Cincinnati first founded in 1788 as a settlement, officially incorporated to achieve city status. Okay. All right. So they wasn't necessarily named after a queen. Just somebody said it was, best city in the West. And at that time, Cincinnati was considered the West.
I don't
All
believe
right.
this. There's so many cities in the United States that supposedly are referred to as the Queen City. Denver, Colorado, the Queen City of the Plains. Dickinson, North Dakota. I've never been there. Allentown, Pennsylvania, sometimes referred to as Manchester, New Hampshire, referred to as the Queen City due to it being larger than New Hampshire's capital, Concord. There's a lot of cities in this country that like to be known as the Queen.
I think we'll just kind of end it on there before we say something we'll regret.
Okay.
All right, everybody. I think we can wrap it up for tonight. Ken Musillo, thank you for hitting super chat. Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll be back tomorrow night at our usual shopping time, which is at 7:35 p.m. Eastern. All right, and we got 111 likes tonight, which is really nice.
Yay.
You have anything to add before you say goodbye?
No, nothing. It's
Then
been a fun evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
say goodbye, Joe.
Goodbye, Joe.